Hello. Today is a special video. Today, I will be doing a list of popular books I hate. I put off doing this video for a while because I felt like I was going to piss people off and get downvoted into oblivion. But I've seen some other booktubers make these kinds of videos, so I thought it was time to put in my 2 cents. And these are a list of 8 books, some of which I read a long time ago, like in high school. And I still remember them, unfortunately, parts of them. Certain sentences, certain scenes, they have stayed with me because I had that much of a visceral reaction to them. And all of these books were quite popular, whether they were on the New York Times bestseller lists, whether they were critically acclaimed. I think there's a Pulitzer Prize winner in here. So, without further ado, here's a list of 8 books I really hate. She's Come Undone by Wally Lamb. I read this book when I was in high school. I think I was a senior in high school, and I am 36 now. So it definitely stayed with me in how much I hated this book. This book is literally the definition of trauma porn. And I wish that term had been around when I was in high school because that's how you describe this book. It is about a young girl's life growing up in the 1950s up until it follows her throughout like her mid to late 30s to the 1990s, which is when this book was published. And it's just basically all of the trauma that happens in her life. Every terrible thing you can think of, it happens. I could tell a man wrote this book because it was like he tried to get inside the mind of a teenage girl, but he just failed miserably. I don't know how else to describe it. There was something about this book I felt that almost relished in the victimization of a female character, and it made me feel icky and uncomfortable, and I couldn't quite articulate it as a 17-year-old, and now I can, and I'm like, that book was god awful. Okay, so basically it's this young girl in the 1950s, and there's not really a plot, it's just like bad things keep happening to her. She's raped by a neighbor, and then she binge eats to cope, and she gets really overweight. He actually says like a specific number, and he says that this specific number, which is like, it's big, but it's not like, you could still get in and out of a car. Like, she's not 600 pounds. But according to Wally Lamb, if you are 256 pounds, you have trouble getting in and out of a car. And then she's about to kill herself at one point, and she goes to the beach and she sees the beached whale. And she empathizes with the beached whale because she is a fat girl. No, this is not how women think. It is not how women think. She is like, becomes a stalker and obsessive with this guy, and they get in a relationship. At one point, she has like a weird lesbian relationship with a janitor, and then she kills a janitor's goldfish. She has to get an abortion with the guy she's with. It's just full of a lot of cardboard stock cutout characters. It is like 500 pages, and I suffered through it because when I was young, I felt like I had to finish books until the very end. And it was like a train wreck, but not in a good way. It just was not, this book was awful. It made me feel so uncomfortable to be a woman. And also, I hate the cover. The specific edition I had that freaking face in the moon over the ocean. That cover makes me so angry. I can't even articulate why. It reminds me of like the Teletubbies face in the sun. I hate that freaking cover, and I hate that book. Awful. No, thank you. Goodbye. The next book I really hated. It was very popular. It was turned into a film. Is Eat, Pray, Love by Elizabeth Gilbert. I read this when I was 19, and a coworker of my mom's gave it to me because I was going to study abroad in Rome for a semester, and there is a section where Elizabeth Gilbert goes to Italy. And I read this book, and I hated it. And I hated Elizabeth Gilbert's writing and her tone and the way she portrayed places, because she never portrayed these 3 different places she travels to. She just happens to go through a divorce and magically has money to travel to these 3 different places. There's like a backstory to that as to how that even came about. But regardless of that, she never portrays these places beyond a stereotype. Oh, I went to Italy to eat. Italy is so much more than just food. Like, yeah, the food's great, but like, can you try to portray these places beyond stock cardboard cutout like scenery? It's she doesn't even interact barely with any of the locals, to my knowledge, that I can remember, because when she goes to India to find herself, I mean, there's a whole, like, list of literature about white Westerners going to third world countries, the global South, and finding themselves when they're not even actually... I mean, she's not Hindu, she's not Sikh. This sort of, like, hodgepodge New Age thing of, like, sort of, like, taking little things from religions and going there and appropriating them, but yet... she stays in an ashram, and then she just interacts with, like, other, like, tourists. I think the tourist I remember the most she interacts with is a British guy. It's just what rubbed me the wrong way about them, even looking back, because I couldn't articulate this stuff when I was 19, is that I go to these poorer countries, and I'm going to portray them in this one-dimensional way where I find myself, which is, like, not at all related to the actual lived reality of living in those countries. How can you even barely say you explored there when you were just so far removed from everything? I mean, at one point she buys a woman in Indonesia a house, and then the woman is weird with the house and she doesn't want it. And Elizabeth Gilbert is offended that she doesn't want it. I mean, maybe she's skeptical of you because she doesn't trust you that you're her white savior. And oh yeah, I found love again. Tee-hee. Also, there is one scene I remember. She talks about sexual fantasies, and she talks about Bill Clinton. Like, I don't know why, but that stuck in my brain, and I cannot get it out. So, I hate this book. It is literally the equivalent of, like, basic live, laugh, love. There are so many more better travel memoirs you can find. It's just the whole tone and this, like, super privileged, basic, oblivious, white Western woman. It just really rubbed me the wrong way. Using these countries, these poorer countries, as a backdrop to find yourself. No, please. The next book on my list is The Brief, Wondrous Life of Oscar Wilde by Junot Diaz. This was actually a Pulitzer Prize winner. I hate the way Junot Diaz writes women. I could not stand it. And I think that Junot Diaz thinks he's really progressive and feminist because he writes these strong female characters that are kick-ass. But literally, he has to sexualize every single female character when she is being described, down to her bra size and her fuckability. There's even... Okay, this book is about... I don't remember... It's about this nerdy Dominican American kid named Oscar who lives in, I guess, New Jersey. And it sort of goes back and forth from the Dominican Republic and some of that history under the dictator Trujillo to the present in Jersey. And we see some of this history of under Trujillo's reign. But the way he writes women... Like, there are 3 sisters, or 2 sisters, I think, that stand up to Trujillo. And, of course, he has to mention that they're virgins and that Trujillo had them killed because he couldn't screw them. The way it completely took me out of it. I did not like the main character, Oscar, because instead of being, like, the typical machismo, he's another kind of, like, toxic jerk, though. He is, his whole personality is comic books. And it's very, very specific to that. And so if you don't know, like, these specific comic book references, that's the entire character's personality, you're like, I can't relate to this. Also, he is obsessed with getting a girlfriend and getting laid. I mean, he's like a typical incel. That's how I remember reading this book. And I just hated it. I hated everyone in this book. I hated the way the women were written. The tone just bothered me. It completely bothered me. And I don't understand why this book is so popular, why it won the Pulitzer. Nothing about his writing is really special or unique. I don't understand why it's like on like 100 best books of the 21st century so far from the New York Times. I have no idea. For the life of me, I have no idea why his writing is popular. But I remember being very irritated reading this, and I never wanted to read anything by this guy again. No. The next book, this is actually the first book on this list, but not the last, that I could not finish because it made me so angry, is Fear of Flying by Erica Jong. I wanted to read this for a while because it is considered a second wave feminist classic about a woman exploring her sexuality as she realizes that she is stifled by the confines of monogamous marriage. And yeah, I read it and I was so shocked that this book is so racist. So racist. Holy crap. I mean, I understand when I'm reading books from another time that, yeah, there's going to be like one-off sentences, things that have just come out of like characters' mouths that you're like, okay, whatever, it was for the time. But this I felt was like pretty racist even for the 1970s. It's also autofiction. It is so clearly Erica Jong's life. The character is so clearly based on her. Now, Erica Jong is a white woman. She has a Chinese last name because her husband, who is fictionalized in this piece, he was Chinese American. He was a psychiatrist. And the main character's name in this book is Isabella Wing. And this is quite clearly based on her life. And so there are those like one-off sentences she says, but, you know, kind of getting out at like she's out to get everyone kind of, right? But there was one chapter where she goes to Lebanon because her sister married a Lebanese man and they had kids. And the chapter is titled Arabs and Other Animals. So yeah, I did not finish reading this because what women, Erica, are we talking about when we talk about feminism and female liberation? Certainly, you do not mean Lebanese women because you think that we are animals. And I know people could say, oh, she was just degrading the men because the brother-in-law makes a pass at her. When you degrade the men, you are also degrading the women. If your feminism is not intersectional, then it's bullshit. I mean, the thing, too, that also annoyed me about this book was that Erica Jong is Jewish, and so there is, I think it is somewhat, at times, you have sort of this question of, like, Jewish identity, and so she goes to Germany, and this is, like, 30 years out from the Holocaust, and she's wondering in her mind, the character, how could these Germans have just gone on with their lives and pretended that they didn't know what was going on? Were they really innocent when all their Jewish neighbors were disappearing during the Holocaust? And so she's so sensitive to anti-Semitism, but yet so blatantly racist against Arabs. I mean, literally, the chapter on Lebanon, I mean, that's not even the only thing she says against Arab people. I mean, there's a lot more, but, like, that was, like, the most blatant, like, oh my God. Yeah, so it's just a sort of, like, white feminism, subtle Zionist kind of ideology that I just don't F with because it's very dated. It has not aged well. And this kind of rhetoric, in case you think I sound like I'm overreacting, is harmful. It is harmful because this level of dehumanization is literally what leads people to support genocide. I mean, 1970s, Palestine, the Nakba had happened. The Nakba was still ongoing. There were still multiple Israeli incursions into Lebanon at this time and massacres. So, yes, this book is just hot garbage. I did not finish it. I put it in the book bin. The next book on my list is by an author I have a love-hate relationship with, and that is Philip Roth's Portnoy's Complaint. This was thankfully not the first Philip Roth book I read, because if it was, it would have been my last. This has to be one of the most unlikable characters I've ever read, and I think that I don't know what Roth's intention was, but I think he was trying to troll us, and it worked. But it's so frustrating to read. It is about a mama's boy, a man-child living in the 1950s, and he has like a weird visceral hatred of his mother, and it's never really explained why. I remember some of the, like, he has some of the most misogynistic thoughts I think I've ever read in a book, particularly towards not just like women in general, but his own mother. Like, for instance, there was a scene where his mother asks him to go to the drugstore to get pads because she's run out. And he's so offended that he would have to go to a drugstore to buy pads. It insults his masculinity. It's so embarrassing. And he says, I should have just let that bitch bleed out on the floor. I mean, I was like, okay. It's the whole book is just how he's immature, a selfish man-child, sex-obsessed. He treats women like crap. At one point, he, like, travels abroad to Israel and he tries to rape a woman. I don't even know. I actually blacked that part out, but I remembered it when I was looking at this book on Goodreads. It's just, I felt like I was being trolled. I really felt like I was being trolled, and I don't know what the point of this book was, but it truly is, it's obnoxious. It's just a terrible book with a terrible, terrible character. I think it was like deliberately trying to piss people off, and I guess it worked, but I thought it was garbage. So I just don't know what the point of writing like super misogynistic stuff is. Like, why? What boundaries is this pushing? The next author, speaking of boundaries being pushed and misogynistic stuff, is American Psycho by Easton Ellis. I went through a phase in my early 20s where I had a serial killer phase, and I read a lot about serial killers, and so naturally, that is why I read this book. And this book, I think, is like one of the few books in my life where I was reading a specific scene and I wanted to throw the book across the room. It is just gore porn. It's just gore porn after gore porn after gore porn. I don't know how, like, did he have editors? It's also rather boring at parts because it gets so repetitive. It's gore porn and then the main character going on long tangents about business cards and certain like pop groups of the 80s that he loves. And yeah, it's supposed to be a critique and commentary on 1980s excessive consumerism and capitalism, which is really weird considering how Easton Ellis politically turned out. But I just don't know, was it necessary for all of that, like, needless gore porn to make your point about the 1980s? I mean, the scene that really, like, I was like, come on, was how the character tortures a sex worker and a rat. That scene made me want to throw the book across the room because I was like, you are literally trolling us. You're trying to trigger us in the most obvious way, and it's not talented. It's cheap shock value. It doesn't take talent to do that, to write that. I don't really vibe with any of his work. I mean, I've read Less Than Zero. It was very forgettable. I just don't like Ellis's work, and I don't like this book. I saw the movie, and the movie's actually a lot different. The movie has a very dark humor to it that this book lacks, and I don't know if that was Ellis's intention. Was it he was trying to make this, like, darkly funny, but he failed miserably, and the film is much, much better. Much better. So I recommend the film over the book, but the book is just pure gore porn, and I don't really see how there's any talent in it. The next book, I debated even putting this on here because it is not literature. It's a memoir. But I put Elizabeth Gilbert's on here, so I'll put this one on here. Tucker Max, I Hope They Serve Beer in Hell. I read this I bought it in an airport on a long international flight. Why? I do not know. I don't know if I just was curious, I guess. I was 19, I don't know. And I think I read maybe 25 pages. And I was like, no. The thing that offends me about this book is not even the overt misogyny. It is, how was this published? Like, literally, how is this published? This guy's not a writer. This is literally the equivalent if someone sat on a, like, keyboard and farted. there's no talent to speak of. It's not funny. There's no like unique way of turning a sentence. It's just, I mean, there's certain scenes I will remember, like about how a girl performs a sex act on him while he's taking a dump. That's great. But yeah, this just angers me that this guy was like given a book deal to a major publisher and published, and people bought it, and he continued to publish, and I think this was a movie. How? I mean, if you want to read about like drunken debauchery and womanizing, go read Hemingway or like, oh my God, Hunter S. Thompson. I mean, I don't like their writing either, but at least they are relevant to the historical time period that they were writing in. This guy, like literally the fact that that this was published is what made me angry about this book. And the last and final book, this is probably not the worst. Well, I put this as number 1 because even though Tucker Max is worse in terms of the writing, this is considered part of the American literary canon. And it is Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand. I actually can't even tell you what this book is about. I think I like didn't finish it after like page 40 or something. And it is a behemoth text. And it's not even that like I can read people who have different political ideologies than me. So it's not that. Because when reading this, I couldn't even tell you what her political ideology was. It is, it's just pages and pages of characters with monologues. Monologue after monologue after monologue to hammer her point in. And to be honest, I was so bored, I couldn't even get the point. I know what she believed in. She was, I mean, I was like Ayn Rand's polar opposite because I'm like a socialist, so... But like just this writing, how do people read this? This is so boring. It is so boring. It is not well written. It was terrible. I don't understand her appeal at all. I was like, I'm not doing this. I'm not torturing myself. Also, like, I think I asked for this book for like a holiday or something. My mom got me the mass market version. No, I'm not gonna torture myself with that small ass print for like a 600-page book. I don't understand why, though. I don't understand why it is so popular. But yeah, those are all the books I really, really hate. From the least worst to the worst. So please let me know if you have any books that you really hate that are really, really popular and made you angry. And that's all for now. Give it a thumbs up, subscribe, comment. Send me hate. I don't care. No, I'm just kidding. Don't do that. I will report you. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.